National parks and areas of immense wilderness can be dangerous if visitors do not take proper precautions or ignore warning signs and guidelines. Interestingly, a few years back, a woman captured a strange photograph while exploring the Parc Chauvet in Canada. The image was taken on June 18, 2011, with the woman explaining that she was exploring the park with her family. She was with her 3 daughters at the time, and during the hike she took a variety of photographs. When she got home and looked through the images in the background of one of them, she could see a mysterious humanoid, explaining that at the time, she didn't notice anyone in the background. Oddly enough, when zooming in on the face, she couldn't make out what it was. To add more confusion, there wasn't anything close to the humanoid that would help with an identification. One user said the following: "The wilderness is home to many mysteries, and this isn't the first time that something strange has been captured in the background of someone's photo. This individual is definitely a humanoid, which helps us narrow down what it could be. If it's a human, which seems to be the most likely answer, then I would guess that the person is wearing something on their face. It looks like a fisherman, and this would explain why they were seen close to what appears to be a river, although this could just be the rocks giving off the impression of a river. The strange thing is that the woman said she didn't notice anyone at the time the photograph was taken, and that makes sense as they seem to blend into the background quite well." End quote. Others went down a more sinister route and suggested it was someone in camouflage and that they may have been waiting for unsuspecting hikers to walk past. Although this sounds dark, this wouldn't be the first time that something strange has unfolded in the wilderness, as each year, thousands of strange reports are made by everyday people. Over 250,000 individuals are reported missing every year, with estimates of actual missing persons cases that are left unreported, pushing that total to more than 300,000 cases annually. With that many reports, it's no wonder that a vast majority of these cases are left unsolved. However, every now and then, there are a series of missing cases that emerge that are so peculiar, they become the subject of internet theories and impossible to explain cases. Known as the missing 411, there appears to be a substantial number of missing persons cases relating to the disappearances of individuals from national parks. In fact, many of these missing 411 cases are believed to not be investigated too deeply, and this is due to some form of supernatural or paranormal event that took place in these undisturbed locations. The strange recovery of Gunnar Peterson. Unlike typical missing 411 cases, the disappearance of Gunnar Peterson would also feature a heartfelt recovery, with Gunnar appearing to have been in perfect health at the time of his recovery. His account for exactly what caused his disappearance is a matter even more difficult to explain, and is often remarked as one of the first true missing 411 abduction cases dating as far back as the early 1950s. According to the Gunnar Peterson report, back on the August 6th, Mr. Peterson had traveled to the Colville National Forest located in the state of Washington, only 2 miles south of the Canadian border, with his entire family, to engage in a nice relaxing weekend vacation of hiking up and down the Churchill Mountain. Once at the National Forest, it became apparent to the family that the native wild-grown huckleberries were in season and ripe for picking. This sudden realization led the family to planning their day around picking huckleberries together on the side of Churchill Mountain and spending the rest of the day having a picnic at the summit. Unfortunately for the Peterson family, as the group were picking huckleberries near the top of the mountain in open areas well within line of sight of each other, the family suddenly noticed that the father and husband, Gunnar Peterson, was no longer within sight. Wondering where he had gone off to, Gunnar's daughter, Mrs. W. A. Graves, had called out to her father several times but got no response. At first, the family was not worried about his temporary absence, believing that perhaps he had decided to use the restroom nearby or ventured into a more secluded area where he would no longer be within earshot of the group. However, as the day stretched on, the family grew increasingly worried as every member continued searching and calling out to Gunnar, but getting no response. After seeing no sign of Gunnar for over 3 hours, the family would immediately call the local Stephen County Sheriff Department and report 65-year-old Gunnar as missing. Within only a few hours of being alerted, Sheriff Beryl Warren would bring together several dozen search and rescue volunteers made up of local residents, fellow law enforcement officers, the National Park Forest Service personnel, and several dozen soldiers from the local military base. The first night, the search and rescue volunteers focused on combing through the area where he had last been seen with the family, following any trails and areas that connected with wild huckleberry bushes that the father could have ventured off into. Despite looking through every open huckleberry bush, there was no sign of Gunnar. After the first 2 days of searching, law enforcement and search and rescue volunteers were growing increasingly desperate due to the sudden drop in temperature in the area and the light rain. Given the fact that the mountain stands at a height of almost 4,800 feet in elevation and is filled with layers of lush thick forest and hundreds of small running bodies of water, search and rescue teams were growing increasingly concerned with the possibility of finding Gunnar Peterson alive, as they believed that terrain would have made it incredibly difficult for Mr. Peterson to have safely made his way down the mountain while lost and alone. By the third day of Gunnar Peterson's disappearance, a specialized canine search and rescue team was employed in the search that had come from Idaho and eastern Washington. After the family supplied the dogs with clothes and shoes that Gunnar Peterson had worn, the dogs had followed the scent into the middle of a huckleberry bush path where Mr. Peterson had last been seen by his family. Oddly enough, the sheriff would remark that the canines seemed confused as to where the trail continued and were unable to maintain Gunnar's scent for long before losing it entirely. After 7 days of looking for Mr. Peterson, search and rescue volunteers started to give up hope on finding Mr. Peterson alive, causing the search efforts to slowly taper off as law enforcement, military personnel, and Forest Servicemen had the primary goal of finding a body and no longer a living person. The search for Mr. Peterson would continue for another 3 days until Gunnar's daughter and her husband would find Gunnar more than 5 miles away from where he had last been seen. According to Gunnar Peterson's daughter, she and her husband continued searching for her father in a circling radius that would lead them more than 5 miles away from the base of Churchill Mountain. As they were in the area, they started to notice a collection of abandoned houses and shacks seemingly constructed in the middle of nowhere. According to locals in the region, the houses had been constructed many years ago and were at the center of what was referred to as high strangeness, with many of the locals too scared or superstitious to venture into the areas. As they searched through the abandoned shacks, Gunnar's daughter would find Gunnar sleeping in one of the abandoned buildings seemingly in perfect health. According to Gunnar Peterson, he had survived in the area for 10 days, primarily by drinking rainwater and living off of huckleberries as his main source of food. Oddly enough, at the time of his recovery, Gunnar Peterson had only been aware of 8 days that had passed and had no idea that he had been missing for a little over 10 days since the search began. When search and rescue volunteers and investigators questioned Gunnar Peterson as to how he appeared to have disappeared from the region, it became obvious that something far more bizarre had occurred. Gunnar Peterson claimed, when talking to investigators, that he had been picking huckleberries with his family only a few feet away from the group, when he suddenly felt a large mass strike the back of his head. He would then wake up sometime during the middle of the night in pitch-black darkness, believing that a falling rock must have knocked him unconscious. Oddly enough, there were no marks or signs of damage against Mr. Peterson's head, and he had been standing in an open field of bushes on the side of the highest point on the mountain where any falling debris would have been difficult to explain. Even more bizarre was that Mr. Peterson counted only 7 days having passed after he had awoken from his unconscious state. This led him to believe that he must have been knocked unconscious for a period of over 2 days, as he was unable to account for 2 of the 10 days that he had been missing, originally believing that he had been missing for only 8 days. The exchange of volunteer search and rescuer Gerald DeBerry. On the October 10th, back in 2011, a small family had been visiting the frozen wilderness of surrounding Fairbanks, Alaska, located on the northeastern side of the small town, when the group suddenly noticed that one of their family members was no longer following closely behind. A young woman by the name of Melinda Mindy Stratz had been trailing behind the group as they traveled through the area, riding on her bright red four-wheeler vehicle that was pulling a small trailer and her Jack Russell Terrier, when it appeared that she had suddenly vanished from the area. Immediately, Melinda's brother, Michael Stratz, contacted the Fairbanks Police Department and alerted them to his sister's sudden and unexplainable disappearance only a few minutes prior at around 2 in the morning as they were traveling. Due to the dropping temperatures in the region, as well as the light snowfall, the local police department did not hesitate to contact Alaska State Troopers and volunteer groups to begin an immediate search throughout the area. Within a couple of hours, several teams of search and rescue volunteers were in the area, alongside the Alaska State Troopers, to begin searching the region within a 5-mile radius of where Melinda Stratz had last been seen. The team would search the area all morning, Throughout the afternoon and early into the evening, when one of the search and rescue volunteers would spot a bright red vehicle, a small trailer and Melinda Stratz, at the bottom of a small ravine known as Frozen Foot Creek. Given the dropping temperatures and the hours that she had been missing, Melinda was immediately escorted to medical services to ensure a rapid recovery. It was at around this time that it became obvious that Melinda appeared to have been in a state of intense confusion. Little details surrounding Melinda's state and recovery are known, however. It's believed that Melinda is unable to remember any details during the time of her disappearance and up until her reappearance, but believes that she must have turned off at a wrong corner and ended up down in the Frozen Foot Creek after spending several minutes looking for her family as she was traveling. However, another strange fact about Melinda's recovery was that several search and rescue volunteers had already claimed to have visited the area of Frozen Foot Creek, but were unable to have seen any sign of Melinda Stratz or her bright red vehicle and trailer. As family and friends were celebrating Melinda's recovery and her safe return, volunteer teams began to realize that one of their search and rescuers had been missing for roughly several hours. It was at around this time that Alaska State Troopers began their second search and rescue mission for a man named Gerald DeBerry, who was believed to have gone missing sometime around 6:45 in the evening, when he had last been seen an estimated 4 miles away from the trailhead they were currently searching. According to fellow search and rescue members, Gerald DeBerry had returned to the primary camp sometime in the late afternoon to take a break from his search efforts, as he claimed that he needed time to warm up as he was getting far colder than he was used to. Soon thereafter, one of the volunteers had constructed a fire for the team to use, and Gerald DeBerry was provided with another overcoat on top of his existing coat, as he stayed around the fire for a few minutes to help warm up. After a sufficient break and feeling warm and ready to begin his search efforts again, Gerald got onto his bright green Yamaha Kodiak four-wheeler vehicle and traveled out 4 miles from the trailhead where he had last been seen. Several minutes after Gerald DeBerry had last been seen, Melinda Mindy Stratz had been found at the bottom of Frozen Foot Creek. Rather than travel out and tell all of the search and rescue members that the woman had been found, many of the volunteers had been holding small portable radios, and so a message was transmitted to all members and for them to return to the base campsite as soon as possible. After an hour, while Melinda was recovering and search and rescue members were getting ready to head home, that was when the teams realized DeBerry had yet to return. Given the fact that DeBerry had great knowledge of the nearby area and should have already returned by that moment in time, troopers and search and rescue teams immediately began their second search to recover Gerald DeBerry. Oddly enough, it appeared as if the tracks to his four-wheeler suddenly ended halfway through following his trail, as if a freshly laid pack of snow had fallen in only a specific area to prevent an accurate read of where his four-wheeler had traveled. Now worried that debris was trapped somewhere, injured or suffering from the effects of hypothermia, teams continued through the night looking for debris, using grid-like patterns of search to cover as much ground as possible, looking for any sign of the missing member. As the night dragged on, the snow continued to fall, and it became obvious that normal methods of search and rescue would be unable to locate Gerald DeBerry, who was now assumed to have been gravely injured and unable to return to safety on his own. Several hours later, within the early hours of the morning on the October 11, 2011, Alaska State Troopers employed the use of advanced aerial support in the form of a helicopter and a Piper Super Cub airplane, using state-of-the-art thermal signature cameras to help locate Gerald DeBerry and his four-wheeler, which was believed to give off a strong heat signature which would make recovery much easier. Unfortunately, after several more hours, next to nothing was discovered, and over the course of the week the search for Gerald DeBerry dwindled down to a standstill. One of Gerald's friends, a man by the name of Paul Potvin, who owned the nearby lodge where the team and the Alaska State Troopers were using as a base of operations, claimed that he believed something far more sinister had occurred to Gerald DeBerry, given the strange events surrounding his disappearance. On the October 14th, 3 days following DeBerry's disappearance, Paul would provide the following statement to the local newspaper known as the Alaska Dispatch. "It's a mystery. The four-wheeler is gone. Something had to have happened to him. He didn't get lost. Everybody agrees with that. He's been out there way too many times to get lost. That's the most baffling part." Oddly enough, almost exactly a year later, a local miner who had been working in the nearby Faith Creek mine, located at mile 69 off of the Steves Highway, spotted an abandoned bright green four-wheeler resting on a nearby rock at a slight incline. Believing that the abandoned four-wheeler was a bad sign, The miner contacted the local authorities, who immediately searched the vehicle and found that it had once belonged to Gerald DeBerry and was most likely the vehicle he used during his search. Investigators also noted that it appeared that there was still gas inside the vehicle, and that the vehicle appeared to have been purposefully turned off rather than left to run until it cut out. Although another search was done in the area, no sign of Gerald or any of his clothes or equipment was uncovered. Chimpanzees and humans are closely related, as they are both primates and share a common ancestor that lived about 6 to 8 million years ago. In fact, chimpanzees are our closest living relatives, with DNA sequences that are about 98% similar to humans. Chimpanzees and humans also share many anatomical and physiological similarities, such as opposable thumbs, forward-facing eyes, and the ability to walk upright. They also have similar social behaviors, such as living in communities and using tools to accomplish tasks. However, there are also significant differences between humans and chimpanzees in terms of cognitive abilities and behaviors. Humans have a much larger brain and more advanced language abilities, as well as cultural practices and complex social structures that are not observed in chimpanzees. Interestingly, researchers have just announced that an all-out war has been observed between a group of chimpanzees and gorillas, something that's quite surprising, as these two groups have never been seen doing this before. It's a first, and researchers said it gives them a great opportunity to observe why this is happening. The incident happened in the Longo National Park back in 2019, with the study going on to report that it's happened more than once. Those who were close by when it happened reported that it was the chimpanzees who first attacked, saying that they outnumbered the gorillas. Researchers who gathered data on the attack said that it was strange that this happened, and that they are working to get to the bottom of why both the chimps and gorilla were much more aggressive than normal. Both times, an infant gorilla passed away due to injuries. A new study that's looking at the fighting between the two is being carried out by researchers who were on the scene, with them saying that although their aggression is strange and that it hasn't been seen before, they have some theories for why this may have happened, which include the two groups being territorial or competing for food sources. Tobias Deschner from the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Germany said the following: "Our observations provide the first evidence that the presence of chimpanzees can have a lethal impact on gorillas. We now want to investigate the factors triggering these surprisingly aggressive interactions." End quote. We are constantly learning more and more about chimpanzees, but one thing that researchers have noticed is that when pushed, they can be very aggressive and will even take on humans if they stand in their way. This has been demonstrated in areas around Uganda, and as of right now, chimpanzees living in these areas are losing their habitats, and some wildlife experts have said that they are well aware of who is responsible. They've observed humans pulling down the local forests, and they've said that it angered the chimps so much that they've decided to spark a conflict between humans and apes. Although this storyline may sound familiar, the researchers observing the chimps have said that it's almost as if they've had enough, and that they've been observed watching humans from a distance while they tear down the forests. One of the first incidents was recorded when chimps observed the forest being torn down, with wildlife experts saying that they were then observed heading towards nearby crops. Due to the habitat loss, the chimp were able to come much closer to the edge of the forest and see where the humans would return. Scouts were then said to follow some of the humans back, and this is when they found nearby crops. Once they found this, the group was called in, and they started to raid the area. The group were able to take plenty of crops for themselves and even attacked humans. This bold move was successful, and it only gave the chimps more confidence. This, along with other traits, has made experts put forward the theory that chimps won't back down from conflict if they know they are getting something out of it. The incident in Longo happened back in February of 2019, and it involved a group of 18 chimpanzees and 5 gorillas. The incident happened when the two were passing into each other's territories, with the battle lasting just under an hour. The next meeting between the two groups happened in December 2019 and lasted an hour and 20 minutes. This happened because a chimpanzee encountered a gorilla while it was doing a border patrol. Those who witnessed the event said that because the chimps outnumber the gorillas, they were able to separate an adult female gorilla from its infant, which eventually led to it losing its life. The other gorillas were able to retreat, but it's noted that the chimpanzees did also sustain various injuries. The wildlife experts said that it was sad to see the two groups go at each other, and that, as of right now, They are working to better understand what could have caused this encounter to escalate. Tobias Deschner said the following: "It could be that sharing of food resources by chimpanzees, gorillas, and forest elephants in the Longo National Park results in increased competition and sometimes even lethal interactions between the two great ape species." End quote. Simone Pieker from the University of Osnabrück in Germany said the following: "We are only at the beginning to understand the effects of competition on interactions between the two great ape species in Longo. Our study shows that there is still a lot to explore and discover about our closest living relatives, and that Longo National Park, with its unique mosaic habitat, is a unique place to do so." End quote. The research encountered on the two groups was published in scientific reports. The battle between a silverback gorilla and a chimpanzee would normally go one way, and that would be in favor of the larger silverback gorilla. Gorillas are also the world's largest primates, but working out how strong they are is difficult. Many sites report that a gorilla can lift from 4 to 30 times their body weight, but wildlife experts have said that this number is closer to 10 to 15 times their body weight. They also have one of the strongest bite forces in the animal kingdom, and this doesn't come down to the teeth, but rather the massive neck muscles. The average weight of a gorilla is 140 kilograms, but it's reported that they can weigh up to 267 kilograms. When compared to that of an adult lion, it's estimated that a silverback gorilla is over 4 times as strong, with its bite force being twice that of a lion. The difference between a chimpanzee and a gorilla is that the much larger gorilla is actually much more calm, and the chimp is much more unpredictable. Gorillas have shown great sophistication when they are in the wild, but chimps seem to be more intelligent. The researchers have said it's likely that this battle in Longo National Park will continue all the time the two groups are encountering each other. Gorillas seen dismantling poacher traps. We often forget how similar we are to our ape relatives. While we may hold ourselves in higher esteem compared to the other primates currently living on Earth, we actually share almost 99% of our DNA with chimpanzees. In fact, chimpanzees have been observed hunting for meat, showing body language, and even using tools. But it was one site of our distant relative, the gorilla, that had primate researchers going bananas. Staff at the Dien Fossey Gorilla Fund Karasok Research Center in Rwanda saw gorillas destroying poacher traps. Working together, a pair of 4-year-olds and a teenage mountain gorilla cooperated in dismantling traps that are known to harm younglings. It was the first time that primate researchers were able to witness up close how gorillas go about destroying the poacher traps. Gorilla Program Coordinator Veronica Vicelio said the following: "We knew that gorillas do this, but all of the reported cases in the past were carried out by adult gorillas, mostly silverbacks. How they did it demonstrated an impressive cognitive skill." End quote. The discovery showed that even younger gorillas are able to identify and learn how to safely eliminate the threat of the snares. It came as more of a surprise as it was only 2 days earlier that another infant gorilla had been taken out by a poacher trap. Even in grief, which gorillas have been observed practicing, the young primates were able to effectively eliminate the threat of the trap. The discovery was made back in 2012. It was on July 17th, when staff and visitors were viewing some of the planet's last remaining mountain gorillas, that they saw a gorilla approach a snare. As reported by a staff member, a silverback male then signaled a warning to the other gorilla. Amazingly, 2 young gorillas named Dukor and Ruima and a blackback named Totoro maneuvered towards it. In tandem, they worked to dismantle the trap's noose by snapping the branch used to set it. Immediately, they repeated the process on another snare nearby. In photographs taken by the team, you can see the young gorillas looking at the broken sticks that had been used to hide the trap on the forest floor. Together, they jumped on the taut branch attached to a rope noose and removed the rope. They then ran over to another nearby snare and destroyed it the same way. Pictures the staff members took show the young gorillas then examining broken sticks used to camouflage the noose on the ground. It's against researchers' intentions to actively teach gorillas how to dismantle traps, as their intention is to maintain their naturally occurring behavior. Still, they are very pleased the primates are managing it themselves. Pachelio said the following: "Our battle to detect and destroy snares from the park is far from over. Today, we can proudly confirm the gorillas are doing their part too." End quote. Wild chimpanzees seem to know for 100 words. It's typically taught in schools that chimpanzees are genetically related to humans and that they are believed to be our closest living relative in terms of the animal kingdom. However, what is not as well known is the similarities between our two species. Studies have revealed that chimpanzees appear to be developing a proper language used between them. Scientists have recorded over 900 hours of wild chimpanzees communicating, and they've reported they have discovered several hundred repeating words. Unique words and phrases have been detected in these recordings, meaning that we could be witnessing the developmental phases of basic chimpanzee language. This means we could see how they actually came into being and how it potentially could have been for our species when we first developed our early languages. Obviously, a chimpanzee's way of communicating differs from ours. They squeak, howl, grunt, bark, or scream, but it has been observed they often do so in various rows and combinations, which could very well be phrases or words. In 2020, Tatiana Bordolato, a German PhD student, spent time in the Thai National Park, which is one of the last areas of primary rainforest in West Africa, where she followed and recorded 46 adult chimps. She then assembled a team of researchers from Switzerland and France to analyze her findings on the aforementioned 900 hours of recorded chimps. In the past, it was thought chimps could make distinctive sounds that resembled letters, but until now, it was not widely thought they were capable of advanced language with words and phrases. Linguists analyzed the chimpanzee sounds to determine whether they were speaking or if the noises they made were randomized. The results proved that, yes, they are communicating with words using the estimated 400 calls. Chimps will sometimes combine these calls to make them longer. It's possible the study missed various words due to their pitch. Just like with human speech, certain words might mean different things depending on tone. For example, a greeting grunt differs from a grunt of fear. Unfortunately, the research team were unable to find out what the phrases meant. What they did find was that some words are only spoken at the beginning of a sequence, while others are solely used at the end, reminiscent of human language structures. Chimps are incapable of forming the same number of sounds humans can, but that does not mean they cannot converse between each other. As far as we know, they are the animals with the most advanced vocals. A handful of other animals, such as lemurs, are able to utter sounds in couplets or triplets, but it's nothing compared to the 400 suspected phrases chimps can speak. Further research is being conducted into the matter primarily to investigate whether they have actual sentences and clauses or if their form of communication can be truly considered language by our definition. If they do speak in clauses, they have not yet been noticed by biologists. The investigation into chimpanzee communication will likely take a long time, but will hopefully come with fruitful results. As of right now, chimpanzees are endangered. According to the International Union for Conservation of Nature, chimpanzees are listed as an endangered species, meaning that they are facing a very high risk of extinction in the wild. There are several factors that have contributed to the decline of chimpanzee populations, including habitat loss and degradation, poaching for the illegal wildlife trade, and disease outbreaks. Habitat loss and degradation due to deforestation, mining, and agriculture have resulted in the loss of chimpanzee habitats and forced them to live in fragmented and isolated populations. This makes them more vulnerable to poaching and disease outbreaks. Chimpanzees are also hunted for their meat, which is considered a delicacy in some cultures, and their young are sometimes captured and sold as pets. The illegal wildlife trade has also resulted in the removal of chimpanzees from their natural habitats, further threatening their survival. Conservation efforts are being made to protect chimpanzees and their habitats, such as establishing protected areas, reducing poaching and illegal trade, and promoting sustainable land use practices. However, more action is needed to ensure the survival of chimpanzees in the wild. Welcome to the enchanting world of our closest cousins in the animal kingdom, chimpanzees. Chimps share about 98% of our genes, and just like humans, they are also social animals, and they care for their babies in a span of a few years. They spend most of their time in the treetops, and when they come down to the ground, they walk on all fours. However, just like us people, they are capable of walking with their legs, but only for about a mile. They eat termites, and they use sticks to fish them out of termite mounds. They drink water by using bunches of leaves as cups. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we will be taking a look at chimpanzees and their way of living. Chimpanzees seen digging wells for the first time. In 2015, a young female chimpanzee named Onyofi arrived in a wild East African chimpanzee community called Wibera. Apparently, where Onyofi came from, a great skill was digging wells became a common practice. Typically, chimps would learn behaviors such as survival skills through their elders, usually their parents. But in this community, the local chimps learned and started practicing a skill they learned from an immigrant chimp who just joined their group. This story fascinated scientists, and so they published it in the journal Primates. Interestingly, upon watching Onyofi dig wells and drink water from them, male chimpanzees also started drinking from the well, while female chimps not only drank from the well, but also started digging their own wells. No male chimps were seen digging wells. It was presumed that since this practice was exhibited by a female immigrant chimp, that male chimps, especially the dominating ones, perceive it to be a female thing to do, and so they refrain from doing the same. Primate scientist Hella Pater says in a statement, what we've seen in Wibera is a bit different from those groups. First, they live in a rainforest, so most people assume getting water wouldn't be a challenge, but it looks like the yearly few months of dry season is enough to cause some trouble for them. What's also interesting is that the wells all appear next to open water, so the purpose of them is likely filtering, not reaching the water. The chimpanzees might get cleaner or differently flavored water from a well, which is fascinating. It's amazing to see how chimpanzees' resourcefulness highlights the importance of water in their overall health. Just like humans, they develop new ways to access clean or even better flavored water, just like Pater explained. Furthermore, the scientists are very interested to find out if male chimps will start digging wells instead of relying on females to dig them for them. It's possible that the younger males would adopt this practice from their mothers, and the younger males will teach their offspring, both male and females, to dig wells for themselves. As for now, this is a developing story with an ending we have yet to find out. Chimps may be capable of comprehending the minds of others. Have you ever heard of the theory of mind? Basically, it's the ability to understand that others have perspectives and mental states that differ from ours. For the longest time, researchers believed that this is unique to humans. However, with recent studies conducted by a scientist with a stick and a researcher in a King Kong suit, it may have just been proved that just like humans, the great apes also possess the theory of mind. The great apes are a family of primates that includes the bonobos, chimpanzees, and orangutans. Believe it or not, scientists made this discovery mostly by observing eye movement. They gathered 3 great ape species and made them watch videos of a man looking for a hidden object that had been moved without him knowing. The great apes were observed to be looking more frequently at the location where the man expected the object to be despite it not being there anymore. The conclusion of the study suggests that apes were able to perceive what the man was thinking. From the theory of mind, let's move on to the false belief. False belief, according to the dictionary, is a mental proposition that is asserted with high confidence, but lacks a basis in reality. It's an important element of theory of mind. Scientists conducted several studies testing chimpanzees' understanding of false belief. The studies resulted in the conclusion that apes, especially chimpanzees, do have a basic understanding of the concept of false belief. Frans de Waal, a primatologist, said the study design is a genuine breakthrough, not only because it avoids an undue reliance on language skills required to understand narrative and questions in theory of mind testing in children, but also because it highlights the mental continuity between great apes and humans. Cato and Krupany, who led the study, states, "There are other kinds of false beliefs that I think we need to test in order to be sure that apes are relying on this more sophisticated skill. But the big thing here is that the apes clearly have a more sophisticated understanding of others than we previously thought, and that means they can predict others' behavior even in contexts when the actor is misguided, and that's something that humans do all the time." 3 chimpanzees kidnapped for ransom from Congo sanctuary. 3 baby chimpanzees were kidnapped for ransom from a refugee camp in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Their names are Monga, Caesar, and Hussein. They started living in the refugee camp after being rescued from poaching and trafficking. While the accomplices are in the custody of the police and are currently in prison, the actual kidnappers are still on the loose. The kidnappers are demanding a 6-figure sum to return the baby chimpanzees. This is crazy. We don't have that amount of money. Negotiations are ongoing by phone, and the case is in court, said Frank Chantaro, head and founder of the NGO, Jack. Jack runs an animal sanctuary in Lubumbashi, capital of the province of Haut-Katanga in southeastern DRC. The kidnappers asked for a total of $200,000 for the 3 baby chimpanzees. "What is happening to us is unprecedented in the world of great ape conservation," said Frank in a video posted on the Facebook page of Jack. "This ransom demand is a first." 2 days before the kidnapping, a suspicious incident happened where the servers recording the surveillance videos had been stolen. As a security measure, the administration of the refugee camp immediately had the locks changed on all the enclosures and animal cages except for the cages where the kidnapped baby chimpanzees were. It was the morning when the guard noticed that 3 of the 5 baby chimpanzees were missing, and then a few hours later the kidnappers called to demand a ransom. They sent a video of the kidnapped baby chimps as proof of life. Roxanne, who is Frank's wife, received a call from the kidnappers days following the incident threatening that they will decapitate one of the baby chimps if they do not pay the ransom. Wildlife trafficking is rampant and commonplace in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Sanctuary owners and the local government do not have the resources to go after kidnappers, so even though they care so much about the animals, there is really not much they can do. There is an increasing demand for exotic pets worldwide, which results in kidnappers and poachers becoming bolder in their strategies. Baby chimpanzees can be bought on the black market for as high as $12,500. Numerous organizations and individuals are trying to find ways to protect wild animals at risk, especially baby chimpanzees. Right now, chimps are still considered endangered. As the trafficking situation becomes worse, it's imperative that we act fast to prevent our closest cousins from going extinct. It's amazing how much of ourselves we can understand by really paying attention and studying the behaviors and tendencies of primates. Not only do we develop a better comprehension of what and where we came from, but we also get a glimpse of the ways we have evolved as a species and how far we have come in terms of our intellectual capacity and social skills. Nikola Tesla was a Serbian-American inventor, electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, and futurist. He is best known for his contributions to the design of the modern alternating current electricity supply system. Tesla was born in Smiljan, Croatia, then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and studied engineering and physics in Austria and Czech Republic. After working for several years in Europe, he emigrated to the United States in 1884. In 1887, Tesla developed the concept of the alternating current electrical supply system, which is still used today for power transmission and distribution. Tesla also invented numerous other electrical devices, including the Tesla coil, a type of resonant transformer used in wireless communication, and the Tesla turbine, a bladeless turbine that uses fluid to generate power. Tesla was a prolific inventor and held over 300 patents in his lifetime. He also contributed to the fields of robotics, radar, and computer science. Despite his many accomplishments, Tesla struggled financially in his later years and passed away in relative obscurity in New York City in 1943. However, his legacy has endured, and he is widely regarded as one of the greatest inventors of all time. Going back a few years ago, the FBI released 64 pages of unreleased documents, and these were of particular interest because for many years, theories had been floating around as to why Tesla's work was collected by the government. Many argued that the majority of Tesla's inventions would never work. So if this was the case, why then did the United States government quickly swoop in and collect his work shortly after he had passed away? Even the Central Intelligence Agency has released some interesting documents about the inventor, and again have detailed that they collected some of his work shortly after he passed away. As many have pointed out, something had obviously caught these agencies' attention, as they soon collected his work in order to comb through what he had been working on. One of their reasons for doing this was to ensure that any work of his didn't get into the wrong hands. For this reason, they decided it would be best if the documents remained in the property of the Office of Alien Property Custodian. However, this was until the documents and other pieces of Tesla's work mysteriously disappeared after the war. Interestingly, one document that was released by the Central Intelligence Agency reads as follows. He was particularly interested in high-frequency mechanical and electrical vibrations. He once claimed that, with only a pocket-sized vibrator, he could generate tremors that would split the Earth in two. Some of his experiments were fantastic, like something out of an early film version of Dr. Frankenstein's monster. He built enormous coils at his laboratory near Colorado Springs with which he generated up to 12 million volts of electricity and hurled bolts of artificial lightning hundreds of feet through the air. End quote. Much of what he did was shrouded in mystery, and some of his experiments have never been duplicated. Some admirers claim that Tesla foresaw the so-called Star Wars program. He tried to sell the War Department on the idea of building death rays that he claimed could melt enemy warplanes at distances of hundreds of miles. Some of those papers are held even now in the archives of various United States intelligence and defense agencies, where they are studied for clues that might be useful in modern weaponry. These are some extracts from the official FBI documents that got released. On January 1943, an examination was made of the technical papers of Dr. Nikola Tesla, which after his death had been stored in the Manhattan warehouse in New York City. This examination was made for the purpose of determining if any ideas of significant value in the present United States war effort could be found among his possessions. Participating in this examination were Mr. John C. Newington, New York Office of the Alien Property Custodian, Dr. Charles of the Washington Office of Scientific Research and Development, and John G. Trump of the Office of Scientific Research and Development of Massachusetts Institute on Technology. The following papers, which were regarded as typical of Nikola Tesla's writings and thoughts in the period of 1925 to 1942, were removed for the purpose of record and listed below in random order in which they were found, together with a brief individual abstract. Exhibit A, Possibilities of Electrostatic Generators. An updated article probably written about 1934 discussing the possibilities as a source of high-voltage DC power of the Van de Graaff type of electrostatic belt generator. The article states correctly the electrostatic principles employed in this device and points out that such generators are not suitable for commercial high-powered applications, though of undoubted scientific value. Tesla's wireless tower, erected in 1902 on Long Island, is stated in this memorandum to have charged to 30 million volts. Exhibit B, Reactive Force of Glycerin and Dynamite. An undated memorandum involving some calculation of the explosive power of certain compounds and then deviating to a discussion of the possibility of transmitting power by mechanical vibrations along the Earth's crust. Exhibit C, Process of Degasifying, Refining, and Purifying Metals. A 40-page memorandum probably written about 1930 dealing with the above subject and proposing new theories of capillarity and surface tension. These correspondence indicated that this had been submitted to various industrial companies. Exhibit D, Replying to Ant.org regarding the generation of high voltage and acceleration of charged particles. This document, dated November 8, 1935, answers questions raised by Soviet engineers and scientists regarding Tesla's proposal of Ray. From this answer, it's deduced that the proposal concerned the generation of high voltages by electrostatic means. These means consisted of a high-voltage terminal, presumably supported on an insulating column and charged by a gaseous charge conveying medium passing between ground and terminal. The ideas contained in this memorandum are fairly similar to the bolt conveyor electrostatic generator methods proposed by Van de Graaff and do not appear to offer any unusual features. Exhibit E, Art of Telegeodynamics, or Art of Producing Terrestrial Motions at Distance. This document, in the form of a letter dated June 12, 1940 to the Westinghouse Electric and Manufacturing Company, proposes a method for the transmission of large amounts of power over vast distances by means of mechanical vibrations on the Earth's crust. The source of power is a mechanical or electromechanical device bolted to some rocky protuberance and importing power at a resonance frequency of the Earth's crust. The proposed scheme appears to be completely visionary and unworkable. Westinghouse's reply indicates their polite rejection of this idea. Tesla said the following during an interview: "I wanted to illuminate the whole Earth. There is enough electricity to become a second sun. Light would appear around the equator as a ring around Saturn. Mankind is not ready for the great and good. In Colorado Springs, I soaked the Earth with electricity. Also, we can water other energies, such as positive mental energy. They are in the music of great composers or in the verses of great poets. In the Earth's interior there are energies of joy, peace, and love. Their expressions are a flower that grows from the Earth, the food we get out of her, and everything that makes man's homeland. I've spent years looking for the way that this energy could influence people. The beauty and the scent of roses can be used as a medicine and the sun rays as a food. Life has an infinite number of forms, and the duty of scientists is to find them in every form of matter. 3 things are essential in this. All that I do is search for them. I know I will not find them, but I will not give up on them. Many who worked with Nikola Tesla, along with documents that have been released in recent years, show that Tesla created or at least worked on a device known as a death ray or peace ray. It's reported that this incredible device could destroy or disable enemy targets using directed energy. What's interesting about this is that in recent years, the United States Navy has come forward and said that they are now actively using this technology, saying that it has the ability to shoot targets out of the sky. In fact, the United States Navy said that they are now in possession of the most powerful laser on the planet. Some have questioned whether this technology came from Nikola Tesla. Tesla did have an interest in directed energy and particle beam technology, and he did conduct experiments related to these fields in the later years of his life. However, it's unclear whether any of these experiments ever produced a practical weapon or whether they were simply theoretical in nature. In any case, Tesla was known more for his contributions to electrical engineering, including the development of the alternating current electrical system, wireless communication, and numerous other inventions that have had a significant impact on modern technology. In his life, Nikola Tesla had hundreds of patents and was considered a master of his time, being able to look at things with an open mind, one of these being the vibrational properties of the space around us. A famous Tesla quote is the following: "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." He understood how physical vibrations worked and the effects they had on the human body, both good and bad. Tesla was the man responsible for helping his friend, Mark Twain, beat his constipation. Vibrational therapy is something that modern scientists have found interesting, with one recent study showing researchers that wounds exposed to vibration 5 times a week for 30 minutes healed more quickly than normal wounds, with the scientists saying that wounds exposed to vibration formed more granulation tissue, a type of tissue important early in the wound healing process. Nikola Tesla penned an open letter to talk about the process, saying the following: "During the past few weeks, I have received so many letters concerning the same subject that it was entirely beyond my power to answer all of them individually. In view of this, I hope that I shall be excused for the delay, which I must regret, in acknowledging the receipt and also for addressing this general communication in answer to all inquiries. The many pressing demands which have been made upon me in consequence of exaggerated statements of the journals have painfully impressed me with the fact that there are a great many sufferers, and furthermore, that nothing finds a more powerful echo than a promise held out to improve the condition of the unfortunate ones. The members of the medical fraternity are naturally more deeply interested in the task of relieving the suffering from their pain, and as might be expected, a great many communications have been addressed to me by physicians. To these chiefly, this brief statement of the actual facts is addressed. Some journals have confounded the physiological effects of electrical oscillations with those of mechanical vibrations. This being probably due to the circumstance that a few years ago, I brought to the attention of the scientific men some novel methods and apparatus for the production of electrical oscillations, which I learned are now largely used in some modification or other in electrotherapeutic treatment and otherwise. To dispel this idea, I wish to state that the effects of purely mechanical vibrations, which I have more recently observed, have nothing to do with the former. Mechanical vibrations have often been employed locally with pronounced results in the treatment of diseases, but it seems that the effects I refer to have either not been noted at all, or if so, only to a small degree, evidently because of the insufficiency of the means which have eventually been employed in the investigations. While experimenting with a novel contrivance, constituting in its simplest form a vibrating mechanical system, in which from the nature of the construction the applied force is always in resonance with the natural period, I frequently exposed my body to continued mechanical vibrations. As the elastic force can be made as large as desired, and the applied force used be very small, great weights, half a dozen persons, for instance, may be vibrated with great rapidity by a comparatively small apparatus. I observed that such intense mechanical vibrations produce remarkable physiological effects. They powerfully affect the condition of the stomach, undoubtedly promoting the process of digestion and relieving the feeling of distress, often experienced in consequence of the imperfect function of the organs concerned in the process. They have a strong influence upon the liver, causing it to discharge freely similarly to an application of a cathartic. They also seem to affect the glandular system, notably in the limbs, also the kidneys and bladder, and more or less influence the whole body. When applied for a longer period, they produce a feeling of immense fatigue so that a profound sleep is induced. The excessive tiring of the body is generally accompanied by nervous relaxation, but there seems to be a specific action on the nerves. These observations, though incomplete, are in my own limited judgment, nevertheless positive and unmistakable. And in view of this and of the importance of further investigation of the subject, I prepared about a year ago a machine with suitable adjustments for varying the frequency and amplitude of the vibrations, intending to give it to some medical faculty for investigation. This machine, together with other apparatus, was unfortunately destroyed by fire a year ago, but will be reconstructed as soon as possible. Native American chiefs were leaders of their respective tribes or nations, and their responsibilities varied depending on their tribe's customs and traditions. However, some of the typical duties of Native American chiefs included making decisions. Chiefs were responsible for making important decisions on behalf of their tribes, such as whether to go to war, where to hunt, or how to handle disputes. Maintaining peace. Chiefs were often responsible for maintaining peaceful relationships with other tribes and negotiating treaties and alliances. Preserving culture and traditions. Chiefs were responsible for preserving their tribe's culture and traditions, including storytelling, art, music, and religious ceremonies. Interestingly, Native American and First Nation tribes would go into detail about a mysterious creature, describing it as a hideous monster that you would never want to encounter. This highly debated creature is known as the Wendigo, a North American monster that creates a large dividing line amongst amateur researchers who can't make their mind up on whether the creature is rooted within reality or was completely fabricated. Though the creature has often been compared to that of the jackalope, a known fictitious creature, there are many that swear the existence of the Wendigo is not a fabrication of any kind. And in recent years, hikers have detailed their encounters with mysterious creatures that match the description of the Wendigo, which frighten them enough to make them believe that the creature is not only real, but that it still lurks in the dense forests of our world, occasionally making themselves known to unsuspecting visitors. According to witness accounts, the Wendigo is described as being somewhere between the size of an average person to being more than 15 feet tall, and has a physical appearance similar to a corpse with a skeleton frame, gray skin, sunken eyes, large yellow fangs, and a long tongue. The legend of the Wendigo dates far back and tells of a terrible creature born more than 40,000 years ago that would disguise themselves as a human in the hopes of being led back to human villages to devour other humans and destroy their homes. Those who have had an encounter with the creature have said that it's related to large bipedal humanoids, although others disagree and said that they are occasionally seen within the same areas. Because the Wendigo is known to be a creature of the cold weather, it has mostly been sighted in Canada and the colder northern states like Minnesota. As the 20th century began, the locals blamed the mysterious disappearances of people on the Wendigo, which caused the creature to be feared. The Wendigo is said to be about 15 feet in height with a slender body, while others describe the creature as having a bony figure. Different versions tell different stories about its agility and speed, with some saying that it's very fast and can walk over long distances, even during very cold winters. Others say that the creature has a haggard walk, which implies that it has no speed. Unlike other carnivorous animals that pursue prey to capture and eat them, the Wendigo lures people away from civilization by mimicking human voices and feasts on them once isolated. Most of the sightings of the Wendigo happened between 1800 and 1920. Since then, only a few sightings of the Wendigo have been reported. Whether one believes in the Wendigo sightings or not, this may not be just any other folklore aimed at aimlessly scaring people. This legend has been associated with problems in real life like selfishness, violence, and greed. It's also associated with taboos against bad behavior. Some anthropologists believe that the stories of the Wendigo are associated with stress among the Native Americans due to the dwindling resources and fears of starvation. Considered to be one of the oldest known legends of the dogman creature across North America, the Wendigo is an ancient beast of Native American folklore that seems to be eerily similar to the dogman sightings of the modern day and has legends that connect many of the separate tribes of Native Americans across the continent. For those that are not aware, Native American tribes often had separate cultures, legends, and territories all across the North American continent and tended not to mix with other tribes if they could avoid it. Oddly enough, legends of the Wendigo seem to be found across nearly every Native American tribe across North America. The Ojibwe tribe refers to the creature as the Wendigo. The Cree language refers to the creature as the Wetiko, but many different translations have been recorded across Native American legends all the way as far as the Athabascan people of the Northwest Pacific Coast, which refer to the creature as the Wechuj, all of which describe a creature similar to each other and cannibalistic in nature. The Wendigo is described as being a savage giant, more like an animal than a man, and standing at a height much larger than a normal man could ever become. The creature was the physical embodiment of gluttony and greed, and had a hunger that could never be satiated, going so far as eating its own limbs when food would get scarce. Some descriptions claim that the Wendigo possessed the antlers of a deer and the legs of a wolf, though many descriptions claimed that the Wendigo was a malevolent spirit that could possess a person and turn him into an insatiable giant. An Ojibwe teacher would later translate the legends of the Wendigo into English, describing the creature with the following quote, "The Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation, its desiccated skin pulled tightly over its bones. With its bones pushing out against its skin, its complexion the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets. The Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered. It was unclean and suffering from separation of the flesh. The Wendigo gave off a strange and eerie odor of decay and decomposition." End quote. According to the original legends surrounding the Patterson River area of Alaska, it was back during the early 1750s that a native tribe known as the Tlingit named the region surrounding the Patterson River the Bay of Death after a mysterious incident would lead to the eradication of an entire settlement of more than 500 people. Although the event was attributed to a sudden mountain slide that collapsed exactly on the settlement near the bay, many members of the tribe blamed a strange humanoid creature referred to as the Kushtaka for the attack, claiming that a team of the monsters had worked to cause the mountain slide that took out more than 500 of their tribesmen. Worried that another attack was soon to occur, the Tlingit moved out of the region and inhabited a nearby piece of land where they would tell stories of their original land and the attacks from the unknown monsters. One of the most prominent figures of Tlingit folklore, the creatures referred to as the Kushtaka, are described by Tlingit tribal members as being a shape-shifting humanoid creature of malevolent intentions. Legends claim that the creature often shifts between assuming the shape of a humanoid creature or an otter and potentially other animal-like forms impossible to describe. In several Kushtaka legends, the creatures are cruel monsters that take pleasure in tricking the tribe's sailors into freezing or falling into the nearby icy Alaskan waters. In many stories of the Kushtaka, the tribe claim that the creatures will often perform a strange otter-like illusion or shape-shifting trick in order to distract the unsuspecting tribe's sailor or travelers. After a sufficient amount of time, the unsuspecting traveler will suddenly find himself transformed into a fellow Kushtaka, unable to ever return to his friends or family. In the event that this creature is not interested in transforming a tribal member into a shape-shifting creature, it's been known to attack travelers, which then causes them to vanish. In some legends, the creature is known for tricking tribal members into traveling too close to the waters by mimicking the sound of a baby or the screams of a woman. It's also claimed that the creature can be heard by listening out for a high-pitched three-part whistle in the patter of low, high, then low again. Anthropologists have argued that the creature appears to be the cultural equivalent of the boogeyman, often used by mothers in order to warn their children not to journey too close to the surrounding waters or wander too far off alone in the snow. For this reason, it's commonly cited amongst legends that children are especially vulnerable to the Kushtaka, as many disappearances are tied to the creature. By the early 1900s, many American explorers had heard the legends of the bay and were interested in supposed claims that the fresh mountainside was riddled with rich pockets of gold nuggets and rich veins of golden ore. Hoping to strike it rich, a large number of prospectors would make the previous expedition out to the Alaskan wilderness with the hopes of entering into the bay and staking a claim near the mountainside. As is to be expected with such a perilous journey, very few of those that traveled to Alaska in the hopes of suddenly becoming rich would actually survive the journey. According to the vast majority of the stories surrounding the explorers, it's said that they were believed to have perished during the Alaskan winter months, either due to the freezing temperatures or insufficient supplies. Only a handful of survivors would make it out of the bay with bizarre stories to match their impossible-to-explain survival rate. According to many of the expeditionists, while they had been traveling through the region, they had passed by two bodies of water, one later identified as S Lake, and the other described as being in the shape of a crescent moon. As they crossed the area, many of the survivors claimed that they had been attacked by an unknown devil-like creature that lived in the nearby wilderness. The survivors described the creature as being something between a man or a monkey, with their paw prints having been halfway between the formation of the human foot with the passing of a native bear. Each one of the creatures was described as standing at a height of about 4 feet tall with large claws at the end of their limbs, covered from head to toe in long shaggy hair. As the creatures moved closer to attack the traveling expeditionists, many of the survivors remembered smelling a rancid foul smell similar to the stench of a skunk and believed the smell was emanating from the many different sores that were visible on the bodies of the creatures. Very few of the expeditionists survived the attack, as the creatures appeared to have utilized a primitive form of intelligence and organized their attacks as a team, cutting off some of the travelers from the larger group to be taken down individually with ease. Even after fighting and getting away from the creatures, many of the expeditionists would later succumb to starvation, as many of the survivors claimed that the area surrounding the bay appeared to lack any small game or wildlife of any kind. The Yellowstone supervolcano is a large, active volcanic system located primarily in the northwest corner of Wyoming in the United States. It's considered to be one of the largest and most dangerous volcanoes on Earth, with the ability to produce catastrophic eruptions that could affect the entire planet. The Yellowstone supervolcano has been given this name because it's a type of volcano known as a supervolcano, which is defined as a volcano capable of producing an eruption with a volume of more than 1,000 cubic kilometers. The Yellowstone supervolcano has erupted several times in the past, with the most recent eruption occurring about 640,000 years ago. The most significant eruption occurred about 2.1 million years ago, producing an ashfall that covered much of the western United States. The Yellowstone supervolcano is monitored closely by scientists who use a variety of techniques to detect changes in the volcano's behavior. This monitoring includes measuring ground deformation, monitoring earthquake activity, and studying gas emissions. Rather worryingly, just recently Russian officials have come forward and said that they have the ability to make Yellowstone erupt. This was recently announced on a television station where they said that a Satan II nuke would be able to achieve this. One military commentator said that this new missile that has been developed is a special one, and that it has the ability to deliver a large number of nuclear warheads at once. The military official said the following: "It's impossible to build an all-looking defense system, which means that the United States is vulnerable." That is the first point. And the second point is that the Sarmat poses a threat to the most feared facility on United States territory, the Yellowstone volcano. End quote. They carried on by saying that if they were to do this, it would bring America to its knees, and said that United States officials should be careful what they say. The United States Geological Society has come forward and said that this would not be possible, and pointed out that the supervolcano located under Yellowstone cannot be set off in this manner. Military commentators have said this comment may have been made due to the fact that President Biden visited the Ukrainian capital. As some have pointed out though, regardless of whether or not the supervolcano would erupt, there's still people living in this area, and an attack of this type would have a direct effect on them. According to the home statistics, there's currently over 1,000 people living directly inside Yellowstone National Park, with other residents living just outside of the park. Military insiders have said that this isn't a good sign, and that, as of right now, the relationship between the United States and Russia is not good, saying that it's the worst that it's been in years. Launching a missile of any kind is always going to have disastrous effects. All we can do right now is hope that it doesn't reach this point. One of the greatest fears of the modern era, due to its potential to cause an apocalyptic scenario never seen before, is that of the eruption of the Yellowstone supervolcano. Though many might not be aware of its dangers, it appears to pose one of the greatest realistic chances of wiping out the majority of life on Earth and possibly lead to the extinction of the human race. Referred to by scientists as a catastrophic supereruption, the force and material that would be ejected from the massive Yellowstone supervolcano would be among one of the largest explosions to ever be recorded on the face of the Earth. When looking at estimated comparisons of this pressure and ejection of magma compared to that of the Mount St. Helens explosion, of which was claimed to be equivalent to the blasting force of 1,600 times the size of the atomic weapon dropped on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. It appears that the eruption of the Yellowstone supervolcano would be roughly 10,000 times larger in estimated cubic kilometers than that of the eruption at Mount St. Helens. What this essentially translates to would be the immediate ejection of more than 2,500 cubic kilometers of ash, magma, and materials, a size much larger than that of the 0.25 cubic kilometers ejected after the Mount St. Helens eruption. Though the supervolcano isn't expected to cause a massive upheaval of land, this large amount of pressure being released will still cause a blast wave that can cause damage out past the states of Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana. Additionally, the Yellowstone supervolcano lies close to a number of sensitive fault lines all across the West Coast. It's believed that this massive amount of pressure released in one moment, coupled with the massive amount of force generated via the super eruption, will create a domino effect of seismic activity that could lead to fault lines completely sliding in opposite directions, causing a number of massive earthquakes all across the West Coast. The earthquakes would be some of the largest ever to have been recorded and would only lead to further damage of roads, highways, cities, and nearby constructions, completely blocking off those affected from reaching the help they would need. The eruption of the massive Yellowstone supervolcano will do much more than just emit a large amount of materials from the volcano itself. It's predicted that the massive amount of force and pressure released by the volcano will trigger other pockets of magma to release nearby in quick-forming shafts that will grow in size throughout the volcano's eruption. Though scientists are aware of the fact that the eruption of a volcano cannot trigger the eruption of nearby volcanoes, in the event of a supervolcano and its eruption, the incredibly large amount of forces and material buildup will lead to a pocket of nearby magma vents to form, creating a number of normal volcanic entities that will also spew out a large amount of volcanic materials. Though, technically speaking, the Yellowstone supervolcano is not triggering other dormant volcanoes, it will continue to form these vents which will grow in size and will appear to be similar to that of smaller volcanoes having formed. It's also believed that with a large enough tectonic plate shift caused by the overwhelming seismic activity that will be caused by the forces of eruption behind the supervolcano, a number of large events could form along the ridges of the shifting tectonic plates. If these plates shift enough, not only would there be a number of massive earthquakes, but there could be a number of newly formed volcanic entities all along the entire West Coast. In essence, this means that the eruption of the Yellowstone supervolcano would lead to a number of following eruptions, newly formed magma vents, and a domino effect of seismic activity that could cause the formation of new active volcanoes all along the entirety of the west coast of the United States, of which will only exacerbate the issues that spawn from ejected material, damage, and spewing ash. Research has found that after the eruption of a supervolcano, it has often been recorded that there tends to be a massive cooling event that occurs around the world. This is due to the fact that the ejection of a large amount of volcanic ash causes a global darkness event, preventing the planet from sufficiently warming up and causing a global ice age. This appears to also have been the case a mere 100,000 years ago when the Toba supereruption occurred and nearly drove humanity to extinction. Prior to this event, there was an estimated 1 million human population. After the event took place, there were only 11,000 humans left, of which caused a massive bottleneck effect that allows us to see the time in which such an event took place. Additionally, this rapid death count occurred when the Toba supereruption caused a global blackout that lasted for more than 10 years. During this time, a massive ice age occurred and an atmospheric cooling event that lasted for another 1,000 years. Given these calculations, it's expected that if the Yellowstone supervolcano were to erupt in the modern day, the amount of ash spewed would travel through the atmosphere and block out the sun from all around the world, leading to a modern-day ice age that would prevent the sun from being seen for 6 to 7 years in total, creating a seemingly endless darkness for all life on Earth and record low temperatures never before recorded. One of the main problems with the global cooling event is not that of the drop in temperatures all across the world, but rather that of its effect on crops on a massive global scale. With this expected worldwide blackout, researchers believe that for more than 6 to 7 years, it will be impossible for farmers around the world to grow any kind of produce or grain. This also means that it will also be impossible for farmers to take care of livestock of any kind. Considering the fact that agriculture is the lowest rung on the ladder of economic scale, this would lead to disastrous effects on industry, development, construction efforts, feeding citizens, and the global economy. Essentially, there would be mass starvation all across the world as people raid grocery stores for the last remaining food in the world. Additionally, The blackout will lead to a number of wildlife populations immediately dying out as their habitats become destroyed, meaning that hunting and foraging will become impossible to sustain. Even a number of off-grid living situations would be disastrously affected, as the majority of doomsday preppers living on homesteads rely on local agriculture, solar panels for power, along with a number of other supplies that require their local habitats remaining intact. With these changes, the blackout will reach everywhere around the world, making no place safe enough to withstand such changes. Not only will this lead to riots within the short term, but it will overwhelmingly lead to the shutdown of government, civilization, and order itself. As mass starvation circles the globe, the human population will be expected to drop by an expected 95%, as the most developed countries will be affected the worst and the least developed countries will adapt the fastest. A lack of crops from around the world, the breakdown of infrastructure, inability to travel across damaged roads throughout the United States, as well as the complete 6 to 7 year darkness that would follow the eruption means that, at the end of these initial damages, the entire world would begin to enter a stage of total economic shutdown. This will first begin at the center of damaged cities and the inability for governments from around the world to offer aid of any kind. As the volcanic ash spreads and brings darkness around the world, it will only take 3 days before all of the grocery stores run empty as the shipping trucks fail to deliver necessary goods. After this occurs, raiding of supplies will quickly begin as the needs of the people from around the world and starvation would begin. This panic will cause the total breakdown of all law and authority as people center around their individual needs. The inability would then quickly follow farmers being unable to grow and harvest crops, along with many crops from around the world immediately dying out. The only chance one would have at outlasting such an event would require them to have created an underground facility, of which wouldn't be affected to the large amount of falling ash, the threatening panic of other people fighting for resources, as well as the storage of enough food, water, and supplies to last for 7 years. Considering such a safe room does not exist for most, of which even most doomsday preppers only store enough food for 6 months to a year, outlasting such an event will prove to be impossible. Not only does this risk the extinction of all of human life on our planet, but we would see a global cooling event and an ice age lasting another 1,000 years following the 6 to 7 year darkness. So to summarize, if the Yellowstone supervolcano were to erupt, it would have catastrophic and far-reaching effects. The immediate impact of the eruption would be devastating to the surrounding area, with a massive explosion producing a high-velocity ash cloud that could reach several miles into the atmosphere. The ash fall would be widespread, potentially covering much of the western United States and affecting air travel, agriculture, and infrastructure. The surrounding areas would be subjected to a rain of ash and rock fragments, which would cause significant damage to buildings, vehicles, and other structures. In addition to the immediate effects, the eruption could have long-term impacts on the global climate. The ash and gases released by the eruption would be carried by winds around the world, potentially causing a volcanic winter that could last for several years. This could have a significant impact on global agriculture and could cause widespread famine. Overall, the eruption of the Yellowstone supervolcano would be a catastrophic event with far-reaching and long-lasting effects. While the probability of such an event occurring in the near future is considered low, ongoing monitoring and research are essential to ensure that the risk is minimized as much as possible. Anonymous is a decentralized collective of activists and hacktivists who are known for their use of online protests, direct action, and hacktivism to promote freedom of speech, government transparency, and individual privacy. The group is known for their iconic Guy Fawkes masks and their slogan, "We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us." Anonymous first gained notoriety in the early 2000s and have since been involved in numerous high-profile operations. The group operates without a formal hierarchy, and members typically communicate using online forums and encrypted messaging platforms. While Anonymous has been linked to various activities, the group has also been involved in numerous acts of online activism. The lack of a formal structure means that anyone can claim to be a member of Anonymous, and the group's actions are often carried out by loosely affiliated individuals and groups. One of the most interesting leaks was that of the inner workings of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, with the members saying that files that have been obtained by them via hacking and also through declassified networks and it shows that NASA is very much involved in the search for advanced life forms and that they have proof that they have made some sort of contact. And note that the space agency is keeping this from the general public. It's important to note that NASA, the government, and other space agencies have denied these claims, and note that they have never found anything that suggests that advanced life forms are out there. However, Anonymous have said that they have found proof to counter this. One of the members said the following: "Our civilization is on the verge of discovering evidence of alien life in the cosmos. Taking into account all of the different activities and missions that are specifically searching for evidence of alien life, we are on the verge of making one of the most profound and unprecedented discoveries in history." End quote. Another member said the following: "We have obtained files that back up what others have been saying. We are not claiming to be the ones who originally discovered this information, but upon seeing it, our goal has now become clear. We need to get this out to as many people as possible and show them that we are part of something much bigger and that we need to start having more open discussions about our place in the universe." End quote. Anonymous said that discussions are starting to reach a wider audience and that now we should start listening to those who have encountered these mysterious aircrafts, saying that NASA have been aware of these for a very long time and that those who have tried to get this information out there are usually stopped. Professionals have long tried to tell their stories about some of the strange things they've encountered. And this includes people like military personnel and even those within Congress who have long talked about an advanced threat that has been detected across our entire planet. The reason these things are labeled as a threat is due to their capabilities and not because they've necessarily done things that have harmed humans. Many have made the connections between these announcements and that of Gary McKinnon. In 1983, when Gary McKinnon was just 17 years old, he went to his local cinema in North London to see a new movie called War Games. In the movie, a computer genius hacks into a Pentagon network. The movie had a big impression on Gary, and it got him thinking maybe he could be a hacker too. Coupled with his interest in science fiction and mysterious aircrafts, his passion for hacking was only ever going to lead him in one direction. Between February 2001 and March 2002, Gary McKinnon was able to hack into United States computer networks, where he allegedly uncovered a whole host of information that would land him in deep water facing possible extradition to the United States. So the question is, what information did he expose? McKinnon claimed he had managed to gain access to NASA websites, and in an interview with Rich Planet TV, claimed to have found information relating to advanced flying aircrafts and advanced life forms. He claimed to have seen an Excel sheet which had the ranks and names of unknown people, as well as another sheet which had tabs for material transfers between ships. He tried to do some research on the names of the ships, around 8 to 10 in total, but was unable to find any more information relating to any of them. None of these ships were public knowledge, which led him to believe that they were either secret projects or part of a non-terrestrial United States initiative. McKinnon stated the following: "It was not a typical thing in the military at all, so I took that to mean that they probably have a secret space-based program." End quote. Interestingly, just 17 years later, the United States Space Force was established. The United States Space Force is a branch of the United States Armed Forces that was established on December 20, 2019 with the signing of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2020. The creation of the Space Force marked the first time since 1947 that a new branch of the United States military had been established. The Space Force was established as a separate branch of the military to organize, train, and equip military personnel for space operations and to develop space capabilities for use by the United States military and other national security organizations. Its creation was driven by concerns over the increasing militarization of space by other nations. The Space Force is responsible for a wide range of space-related operations, including missile warning, satellite operations, and space surveillance. Gary gained access to these top-secret documents through a program called Land Search. After obtaining control over the domain, he had the capability to search all the files and folders on every machine. Many who followed Gary's story said that many of the things he said back then are now being proven. At the February 2022, Gary went on Reddit and didn't ask me anything. This is where members of Reddit can reach out and ask Gary any questions they have. He said the following: "Hi, I'm Gary McKinnon. I'll make this brief, but there are some things I feel it's important to point out, so you know where I'm coming from. Apologies for not doing a live video response. I have a couple of commercial projects on the go that prohibit me from doing audio and video in relation to my story, and thanks to Reddit for inviting me to do this as me anything. I was arrested in March 2002 for hacking into various government and military networks in America, looking for evidence of mysterious flying aircrafts and free energy. It wasn't a clever hack. No fragmented packets to bypass firewalls or any of the glossy stuff. I had a specific intention, and like any good system administrator, which I was at the time, I wanted a simple process that would catch basic weaknesses, sometimes network-wide, with a simple script and a little creativity. It was cracking more than hacking. Like any system admin knows, the laziest solution is often the best. In my effort to find solid proof that the government and military knew about these crafts, I followed information found in a book by the Disclosure Project. In the book, Donna Hare, who was a NASA launch photographic specialist, said that in Building 8 of Johnson Space Center, there was a lab set aside for airbrushing out mysterious flying aircrafts from high residential satellite imagery. The tool I wrote scanned for local administrator accounts on Windows PCs. It was written in Perl and scanned a Class B in 8 minutes, the low latency due to me running the scan on an already compromised machine on the same or another government military network. I found Building 8 by reading the comment sections of the PCs via the command console. These fields are used for auditing, and luckily NASA filled them all in, so I knew which PCs were in Building 8. There weren't many machines in Building 8, but one of the first I looked at had folders called raw and processed or raw and cleaned or filtered. The images averaged around 250 megabytes and would have taken a long time at 5 minutes per megabyte on a 56,000 modem. So having remote control of the PC via a program called Remotely Anywhere, I decided to view it live on the desktop, which was risky since they work odd hours at NASA. The image was coming down very slowly via the Java-based Remotely Anywhere program. So I cut the color to 4-bit 16 colors and shades and the lowest resolution, which was 640 by 480. I think it may even have been 320 by 240. The image slowly filled the screen and I could see blackness superimposed upon which was a blue-white planet, and superimposed on that was a tubular form that was metallic white, and had domes around its central circumference and at its ends. This thing had no rivets or seams and looked futuristic, though, of course, with the low residential and number of shades in the image, detail was lacking. This was my eureka moment. Donna Hare's lab was still in existence. I was waiting for this image to come down and planning on the fastest way to get all of the other images to me. And right when I was making my plans, I saw the mouse cursor move to the bottom right of the screen, right-click the network icon, and choose Disconnect. I'd been caught and disconnected, missing my chance to grab even a single image. I never did any intentional or accidental damage, and as far as I know, I'm not a vandal. But I did leave stupid messages about disrupting their sense of security. My family and I then fought my possible extradition to America for 10 years, finally winning the case in 2012. I know this is an old story and not too widely publicized in America at the time, so I apologize that there's nothing new, though hopefully interesting questions will result in interesting answers. Let me tell you what happened to me in February 2006. I had only one odd men in black encounter that happened to me, apart from being followed by the same van for 2 hours one time across England. I lived in a bedsit at the time, being unemployed due to my ongoing case, which is one room in a shared house. I was on the first floor, 1 story up if you're American. My lady and I had gone to bed on my fold-out sofa. I think we fell asleep around midnight. I woke up out of a really deep sleep, so I'm thinking it must have been around 2 or 3 in the morning. I was woken up by a really sharp pain in my left heel. So sharp that I jolted awake and reached down to my foot to see what it was, whereupon I was forced to sleep again. It was like going under general anesthetic, uncomfortable and unwilling. So I went from painful shock to instant sleep. In the morning, the first thing I thought of was the pain in my heel. I looked at my foot, and it turned out I'd gone to bed with my socks on, and there were 2 holes in the sock on my heel. I removed the sock and found 2 perfectly round holes in my heel, each around 5 millimeters in diameter, and one with a perfectly circular flap of skin still hanging from it, like someone had done me with a miniature paper hole punch. I can't explain that to this day, and can only assume it's a chip. I've had tri-field meters on it. I made a super-sensitive magnetometer that showed nothing, but 2 lumps did grow on the heel in the months following the event, and they have now moved around to the inside of the foot. Interestingly, in recent years, NASA has come forward and talked about these mysterious aircrafts, with NASA's new chief, Bill Nelson, saying that footage that's been captured of them is interesting, and this has caused researchers to say that perhaps NASA will be making an announcement in the coming years. Each year, thousands of reports are made, and although the majority of these can be explained as things such as planes, helicopters, wildlife, and natural phenomena, there's many of these aircrafts that don't fit these descriptions. And when United States officials are coming forward and saying that some of these are a national security issue, it's caused some to take these sightings more seriously. As of right now, we can only hope that further investigations are carried out and the evidence is released to the general public. NASA's moon landing on July 20, 1969 was an extraordinary achievement and a significant milestone in human history. Landing humans on the moon was a remarkable technological achievement, a demonstration of what human ingenuity and perseverance can accomplish. It was the culmination of years of research, development, and testing of new technologies, including the Saturn V rocket and the lunar module. The moon landing allowed scientists to collect and study moon rocks, which helped them better understand the moon's composition and its origins. The mission also provided a wealth of new data about the Earth-Moon system and helped improve our understanding of the solar system as a whole. Interestingly, in recent years, scientists have come forward and detailed what happened during the original launch. The former head of a secret government program whose task it was to investigate mysterious sightings came forward with bold claims. They told several media outlets that advanced life may exist. They further said that millions of dollars has been put into the research of exotic technologies affiliated with unidentified aerial phenomena. These headlines caught the attention of many around the world. As for the last 80 years, people have been coming forward with their encounters with mysterious lights in the sky. Some have said, if you're going to believe any reports of mysterious aircrafts, you might as well trust those coming from the men who have actually been to space. The list of those who have made claims of sightings includes Edgar Mitchell, Katie Coleman, and Dr. Brian O'Leary. Buzz Aldrin has also talked about his own experience on board the Apollo 11 module and said the crew saw something flying alongside them. At first, they thought it was the final stage of the detached rocket until Mission Control confirmed it was 6,000 miles away. Dr. Brian O'Leary, former NASA astronaut, said the following. There is abundant evidence that we are being contacted, that civilizations have been visiting us for a very long time, that their appearance is bizarre from any kind of traditional materialistic Western point of view, that these visitors use the technologies of consciousness. They use toroids. They use co-rotating magnetic disks for their propulsion systems that seem to be a common denominator of the phenomenon. End quote. After the dawning of the space race, humanity continued very little projects into that of space exploration and instead used the majority of funds for continued space research. Due to this new initiative, it became imperative for space agencies to establish permanent space stations in space to help with continuing research projects and plans. This led to the creation of the International Space Station, which can be used by all nations and governments in a joint effort to further research in all areas. Of course, attempting to understand a brave new frontier comes with a variety of strange and mysterious circumstances that researchers are still trying to better understand. Though NASA continues to deny a variety of theories surrounding the legitimacy of strange findings and mysterious footage, it appears there are pieces of evidence of strange aircrafts that are so overwhelmingly obvious that NASA has refused to even comment on the subjects. Some examples come straight from that of the continuous live footage of the International Space Station. For those that are unaware, the International Space Station has a variety of cameras to monitor spacewalks and other areas that need to be under 24-hour surveillance. This has allowed the agency to play the live footage on internet shows, websites, and live television broadcasting to help build up an interest in space, gather footage for people to see, or to even take up watching time on the public broadcasting network for the United States under the NASA administration. Recently, there have been numerous events where footage of strange objects floating in the distance has led many to believe it's extraterrestrial in origin. After such incidents are spotted, the footage will later be removed or edited, the live feed will be cut, or the entire incident will be completely ignored by NASA. Recently, these changes have become so apparent that NASA has admitted that the majority of the live feed broadcasted as being live is actually much older than many people believe. In fact, there have been several proven instances by the British broadcasting company of the NASA live footage having been old footage from 2015 played during a 2018 live broadcast. Not only has this helped to build up beliefs by people around the world that there seems to be direct evidence of efforts made to cover up advanced life forms, but it also seems to be direct evidence used by believers that something mysterious is going on. NASA admits that the original moon landing tapes got erased. In 1969, one of the most significant scientific advancements of modern history was made as man first stepped foot on the moon. Despite the clear importance of such a momentous occasion, the original footage could not be tracked down and was admittedly lost by NASA themselves. In February 2005, NASA began to search for the 14-track data tapes that contained and recorded data that was transmitted directly from the moon. When these tapes could not be found, the assumption was that this data had been deleted and the tapes reused after transferring the data elsewhere. This was standard procedure and accepted practice at the time. These tapes included video footage alongside other data collected. On the NASA webpage, the criticism surrounding the sensationalist headlines is addressed as it's made abundantly clear that this data and information is available and accessible elsewhere. It's only the originals that were not found. The data was passed on to what was the Manned Spacecraft Center, though is now known as the Johnson Space Center, and this was during the mission itself. This, among other locations, recorded the data. However, this questionable cloud had a silver lining. As NASA appeared to be engaged in a battle between the inaccurate headlines of the media, the hunt for the originals overturned higher quality broadcasting containing the video footage. NASA engineer Dick Nafska and his team stumbled across this find. He said he and his team were desperate to do something for history. Kinescopes were found to have been recorded at the National Archives, and tapes were uncovered that were sent directly from Houston to CBS. Perhaps not in the original form, but the raw data was archived successfully. Following this successful and relieving discovery, NASA began work with a California company to restore and enhance the original footage, improving the definition and image quality, though this also proved to be a problematic move. With a Hollywood company on board, the rumors that the moon landing was faked, staged, or recorded on a military base grew rampant once again. Nafska said the following: "This company is restoring historic video. It did not tell me where the company was from." End quote. Despite the rich rumors and strange headlines, there does not appear to be missing footage of Apollo 11, simply reformatted and discarded originals. All the information is there. Aliens could be sucking energy from black holes. One way that we might be able to spot distant extraterrestrials is from their ability to harness the power of black holes. Scientists have said in a recent report, the potential that distant alien civilizations could be sucking up the energy from black holes could also mean that we would be able to spot it from millions of miles away. The idea is that a kind of technology that harvests the energy of a black hole could leave traces behind. The evidence of such a technology would exist close by to the black hole's event horizon, which is the threshold at which no matter, not even light, can escape. Some have posited that this scenario could explain examples of plasma flares observed in the past, which have been seen to occur nearby black holes. In fact, a new study published in the journal this year has suggested just that. At the moment, this is all conceptual, but the hope is that eventually, we may one day be able to harness such a technology ourselves. Such a possibility could give us a near-endless supply of energy, even if the nearest black hole is over 1,000 light-years away. In a closer timescale, astrophysicists are hopeful that a distant advanced civilization might use similar energy-capturing methods. Luca Camiso, an astrophysicist from Columbia University, as well as co-author of the recent study, said that the most important stage now is to determine what this sort of energy extraction might look like from great distances, such as from Earth. In a statement to Live Science, Camiaso said that it's this exact line of questioning that could help us find faraway alien civilizations. "We have only done the physics in this paper," he said, "but I am now working with a colleague of mine to apply this to reality, to look for civilizations, to try to see what kind of signal you would need to look for. Kepler 70b is hotter than our sun. We have several methods that we can use to track down exoplanets using varying techniques and equipment. Some of these methods include relying on radial velocity, planetary transits, gravitational microlensing, and pulsar timing. These can all get the job done and clue us in to just where we might find an exoplanet lying. Though some methods are easier to use and generally more reliable, namely using planetary transits. Whilst NASA's Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite is perhaps the main satellite doing the job, it was by no means the first technology of its kind set up to track planetary transits. Back in February 2009, NASA launched the now-retired Kepler Space Telescope specifically to look for exoplanets roughly the same size as Earth. The telescope uses a photometer to assess how bright stars are. This can be helpful as when a star has regular dips in how bright it is, it can show a planet passing in front of the star in its orbit, indicating that there is indeed an exoplanet orbiting the star. Now astronomers are able to take this research one step further and use the specific details and small changes in the light to figure out all sorts of information about the candidate planet, including the mass, the speed, the size, and the orbit. This is a useful process, and it is not foolproof as there are other occurrences that can result in the momentarily dimmed brightness of a star, such as sunspots or asteroids passing in front. Overall, the Kepler Space Telescope was a success, mapping out the location of 2,662 exoplanets during its lifetime from February 2009 until 2018. One of the systems confirmed to be found by the Kepler Space Telescope was Kepler 70b, a small planetary system. This had a subdwarf B star, Kepler 70, with two exoplanets, Kepler 70b and Kepler 70c orbiting it. These exoplanets are both gas giants, not unlike Saturn or Jupiter in our own solar system. Of these two exoplanets, one has been discussed and spoken of much more frequently. We have tried to find conditions like Earth. We have found some far more extreme on Kepler 70b. Let us delve into why Kepler 70b has conditions quite as extreme as it does. The answer lies in the exoplanet's past. The Kepler 70 star was once a main sequence star, albeit 18,400,000 ago, as it turned into a red giant stage of the star life cycle. The star pulled the two planets in, engulfing them, swallowing them. We do not know how the two exoplanets somehow managed to survive this experience or whether or not they had an impact upon the star itself. What we do know, however, is that somehow, against all odds, there are two exoplanets that have had any sort of atmosphere they might have once had torn away and are left as two burning hot cores. The sky-high temperatures of Kepler 70b due to the lack of atmosphere, the incredibly close distance to its host star, Kepler 70, the hot conditions of Kepler 70 itself, and its orbit taking just 345 minutes compared to Earth's 365 days, all make it clear that there is not likely life lurking on this exoplanet. The conditions of this exoplanet are fascinating. Exoplanets might only seem interesting when they may contain life. To gain more of an insight into how the different planets and stars without our universe has formed is invaluable information. Astrophysicist discovers numerous multiple star systems with exoplanets. The search for life outside of Earth is so relentless because there are so many possibilities beyond our own solar system. In fact, there are thousands of other stars besides our Sun with planets in orbit around it, including more than 4,000 exoplanets. This number greatly increases the odds of finding extraterrestrial life, and it seems that the number of exoplanets is only growing. Dr. Marcus Montgrauer, an astrophysicist with Friedrich Schiller University, Jena, has recently discovered and characterized several previously unknown star systems containing exoplanets, and his published study has sent waves through the astronomical community. To obtain these results, Montgrauer searched through 1,300 host star systems in the search for hidden companion stars associated with the host star. He explained his process by saying, "Multiple star systems are very common in our Milky Way. If such systems include planets, they are of particular interest to astrophysics because the planetary systems in them can differ from our solar system in fundamental ways." Essentially, Montgrauer was searching for the vicinity of thousands of already known host stars in the hopes that they would have an associated companion star that also had orbiting exoplanets. He used the Gaia Space Telescope operated by the European Space Agency in his search, which ultimately turned up fascinating results due to the precise data that he was able to collect. Montgrauer's search revealed the previously hidden existence of over 200 companion stars. The data that he collected allowed him to precisely categorize these new discoveries, which spanned a wide variety as to type and distance. Most of the companion stars varied considerably in their mass, temperature, and evolutionary stage, and some were located up to 1,600 light-years away from the Sun. The team also discovered that, although most of the study's star systems with associated exoplanets were two star systems, There were a significant amount that were arranged in a hierarchical triple star system, and even one that appeared to be a quadruple star system. The distance that these companion stars are from each other was also heavily studied, as they could tell us information about how planets are formed under different gravitational influences. They discovered that, of the distances investigated, 15% of stars have at least one companion star, which is a much lower frequency than expected. These companion stars are also up to 5 times further apart than normal systems. McGraw says, these two factors taken together could indicate that the influence of several stars in a star system disrupts the process of planet formation, as well as the further development of their orbits. In addition, we will combine the results with those of an international observational campaign, which we are currently conducting on the same topic at the Perennial Observatory of the European Southern Observatory in Chile. We will then be able to investigate the precise influence of stellar multiplicity on the formation and development of planets. One thing is for sure, this astonishing discovery is sure to lead to even more discoveries about the universe in the very near future. Scientists have just announced that days after CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research turned up the Large Hadron Collider with a new maximum beam of energy. They detected that a crack had opened in the Earth's magnetic field and said that it stayed open for 14 hours. Jokes were then shared as this happened around the same time as Stranger Things got released and led some to theorize that perhaps some was opening a portal and that something otherworldly might come through. Although a hole did open in Earth's magnetic field, scientists have said that no interdimensional beings have come through yet. The researchers did say, though, that while the hole was open, it did allow some powerful solar winds to come through. For those unaware, the Earth's magnetic field is an incredibly important aspect to our planet that we do not often talk about, not outside of science lessons at least. The magnetic field can help keep us on track, keeping our compass needles pointing north, but it also keeps our planet habitable by deflecting solar winds that otherwise would threaten to strip away the ozone layer. We may not discuss the magnetic field on a regular basis, but it's truly important in maintaining life as we know it. Those working at NASA have said it's important to conduct further research on solar winds, saying that force solar mass ejections can damage or destroy Earth-orbiting satellites and create power surges that can black out entire cities. This recent hole that was opened up turned out to be a rare phenomenon that goes by the name of co-rotating interaction region. This region has been described as having long-lasting plasma structures that are generated in low and middle latitude regions of the Sun. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration revealed that the solar storm caused a G1 class geomagnetic storm. Lately, however, something strange has been happening to that valued player, with NASA feeling the need to actively monitor and track an anomaly found in the magnetic field where the magnetic intensity seems to have dropped. There seems to be a huge error in the magnetic field, which is notably less magnetic than it should be. An area spanning over South America and Southwest Africa has been impacted thus far. This unusual occurrence, known as the South Atlantic Anomaly, has been toying with the minds of scientists for years now. One group particularly concerned about the strange happenings are the NASA researchers. The American Space Agency has a number of satellites and spacecrafts orbiting in space, many of which orbit Earth. The concern here is that with the magnetic field being weakened, there is a greater exposure to charged particles heading our way from the Sun. The South Atlantic Anomaly does not impact life on Earth, but it will have a significant impact on the spacecrafts in orbit of Earth. As they circle our planet out their low orbit altitudes, these crafts will inevitably pass straight through said anomaly. We believe that during these periods where they pass through, the lessened strength of the magnetic field can cause some disturbances in the technology used within these satellites. They can short-circuit malfunction, and all manner of similar problems can arise when they're struck by high energy, especially charged protons from the Sun. Scientists recently announced that roughly 17 eruptions were detected in a single air of the Sun, with 2 of those flares hitting Earth at nearly 2 million miles per hour. One of the critical aspects of understanding the Sun has to do with coronal mass ejections, or CMEs, and solar flares. A reason for astronomers to keep a close eye on these CMEs is that these eruptions may be able to create blackouts and block communication systems in just a few seconds. In early 2022, SpaceX lost 40 satellites a few hours after launch due to a geomagnetic storm. These developments proved the need for astronomers to take precautions. Sunspots have long been known for their strong magnetic fields, and their ability to release radiation called solar flares. One of these sunspots, called AR2975, has been quite active as of lately. Solar flares typically need around 15 to 18 hours to arrive on Earth. However, this time around, a powerful solar storm was created by a strong wave produced by a fast-moving flare and that overtook a slower flare. The magnetic storm that resulted from this event produced a beautiful natural show of lights that I usually refer to as the Northern Lights. These lights were formed when the magnetic storm hit the upper layers of the Earth's atmosphere. This light show was visible all across the United States, from the northern states to Iowa and Oregon. This solar storm resulted in beautiful views, but larger solar storms can cause tremendous damage. According to SWPC, G3 storms can cause radio navigation problems at low frequency and intermittent satellite navigation problems. Scientists have even predicted that a massive G3 storm may be able to disable the internet use across the world. Those types of storms can cause trillions of dollars in damage, like the solar storm of 1989 in Quebec. According to scientists, the largest solar storm ever witnessed was in 1859 during the Carrington event, when a storm of solar particles damaged telegraph systems across the world and caused auroras that were even brighter than the full moon. As these events result in genuinely beautiful views, it's not worth the destruction, and scientists still have a long way to go in regards to investigating these events. Space has fascinated humanity for years. Ancient civilizations tried to make sense of the cosmos, and in many ways they succeeded. Human history and prehistory is filled with an endless amount of mysteries that can keep humanity puzzling over its true origins for eons to come. One of the ways we find ourselves attempting to understand these gaps in time, as well as the facts of our origins and developments, has been through the recovery of old artifacts, relics, buried sites, and long-forgotten written accounts. It's through these discoveries that have allowed us in the modern age to catch a glimpse as to what our ancestors may have been doing and why they were doing it. However, some discoveries are so strange that it's left even the top researchers in the fields questioning their findings. Apollo 17 was the last human expedition to the moon, and during this mission, the crew made a variety of interesting discoveries, including finding the oldest known lunar rock and also obtaining orange soil which contained volcanic glass. However, another discovery was accidentally made on the moon, which has confused researchers for years. This photograph is from the official NASA archives of Apollo 17 and can still be found on our website. When it was first published, it was listed as blank, but when viewers looked closer, they were convinced that in the background there was a mysterious structure. Those who altered the photograph's brightness and contrast said the object in question looks like a pyramid. And this led to a variety of theories to be put forward, one of which was that NASA had found the structure on the moon and tried to hide it in one of their images. Those who have seen the photograph has questioned why NASA would list it as blank, especially because something can clearly be seen in the background. However, not everyone is entirely convinced that there's pyramids on the moon, and some have suggested that what we're looking at is a low-quality photograph snapped by one of the astronauts. Due to the image's position and lighting, this image has taken on the appearance of a pyramid. This isn't the only interesting discovery that's been made on the moon. Our moon features a gigantic crater. This hole has been on our moon for billions of years, since an unknown object hit the dark side of the moon. We have measured this crater to reach 1,550 miles in width and 8 miles in depth, and so I've dubbed it one of the largest craters within our solar system. The presumed explanation for decades was simply that this crater was formed when contact was made between the moon and a meteor. If this had been the case, then there would be pieces from the outside of the moon on the surface possibly available to examine. Some new insight was provided in January 2019 when the U2 rover was sent to the moon from China. When it reached the bottom of this mysterious crater, minute traces of minerals were recorded by U2, which appear to have come from within the moon's mantle. In a turn of events, new data came to light within August 2019 from a study published within Geophysical Research Letters. After an analysis was conducted upon the materials found at the bottom of the peculiar crater, it revealed evidence suggesting that the crater was composed entirely of crust with no mantle. The crust is the outer layer surface of the moon, with the mantle coming just beneath it. This would imply that an object collided with the moon with enough force to open a colossal crater, but not enough force to release any of the mantle onto the surface of the moon. Co-author of the study, Hao Zhang, planetary scientist working at the China University of Geosciences, explained how the team had anticipated finding the mantle materials at this landing site. He goes on to explain that the lack of mantle organisms rules out the possibility that a meteor traveling with a high velocity could cause this crater, eliminating an assumption we've been acting upon for decades. This study employed the use of spectroscopy in order to clarify and identify the minerals that had been found within the lunar soil. This process observes how each grain is reflected within both visible and near-infrared. This study was carried out using the equipment U-2 was already armed with, performing these reflection tests on 6 different areas of soil ranging up to approximately 175 feet away from the landing site. An already established database allowed each mineral to be identified based upon size, reflectance, and degradation, which often occurs as a result of solar wind. Within every sample, it was evident that the primary mineral on the Moon's surface is plagiaugase. We know this is common in the cross of Earth and the Moon, but that isn't likely to be found within the mantle. This mineral composition supports the meteor theory, but then the unanswered question remains as to what crater this crater. If it was a meteor, then why aren't there chunks of mantle over the surface? The natural satellite orbiting planet Earth might be little more than a pretty object to look at in the night sky, while others may track the Moon's phases compulsively. Whilst we often aim to explore as far out in the universe as we possibly can, there's still so much we've yet to explore closer to home. From the first moon landing in 1969 to the most recent findings, there's still plenty we're uncovering about our moon. U.S. officials have said that they're impressed with what Elon is doing in regards to rocketry, with them saying that they see a future in which the U.S. military and SpaceX can work together. The Pentagon has detailed that Elon's rockets could help the U.S. military when it comes to combat, outlining that these rockets could be used to deploy a quick reaction force which would help them deflect enemy attacks. Interestingly, though, these comments weren't made public but were rather gathered by documents obtained by the Intercept by the Freedom of Information Act. The United States Transportation Command, or US Transcom, revealed that it was partnering with Elon and SpaceX's rocketry, and that they were looking at whether or not it would be quicker to travel through space to launch supplies rather than flying through the air. The idea behind the project was that U.S. Army generals wanted to be able to launch a cargo plane anywhere in the world and wanted to do this in less than 60 minutes. The document reads as follows: U.S. Transcom exists to project and sustain combat power at a time and place of the nation's choosing. The command seeks opportunities to evolve for tomorrow by testing new concepts and making wise investments in innovative transformational capabilities. This allows the U.S. Transportation Command to position the joint deployment and distribution enterprises to create multiple options for nation leadership and multiple dilemmas for potential adversaries. The traditional distance-driven challenge of on-time worldwide delivery is increasingly complicated, but the urgent pace of warfare in an era of contested environments and instantaneous sophisticated cyber threats. The command has identified that common use of commercial point-to-point space transportation may provide a unique and disruptive capability that allows it to better support global deployment, employment, and sustainment of forces. The U.S. Transportation Command Cooperative Research and Development Agreement, CRADA 20002, was established between the Command and Space Exploration Technologies Corporation for the parties to investigate commercial space transportation capabilities as a transportation mode to expedite global delivery of Department of Defense material and personnel. The Cooperative Research and Development Agreement explores 7 objectives: investigate the technical feasibility of using SpaceX's Starship launch system in the next 5 years to support DoD global logistics transportation requirements, investigate the use cases, criteria for choosing space transportation over other modes, responsiveness, supply chain integration principles, risks and military advantages of using SpaceX's Starship to meet DoD global transportation requirements, project the cost of using SpaceX's Starship to deliver DoD cargo and personnel over the next 5 years, and compare to current transportation capabilities, investigate the viability of and innovations for the government and SpaceX entering into an agreement, and for space transportation capacity with similarities to the Civil Reserve Air Fleet, predict industry space transportation capabilities for the next 5, 10, and 15 years, develop concepts for control of space transportation capabilities and implications for space traffic management and domestic international space use policies and protocols, deliver a roadmap to demonstrate configuration, loading, launch, and recovery of DoD cargo on SpaceX's Starship. A synopsis of the current state of research to address stated research objectives are listed below. SpaceX's Starship and Super Heavy booster, collectively known as Starship, is still in development. The selection of space transportation will likely be chosen through consideration of strategic messaging, priority of movement, and speed. Additionally, standardization may be required across airlift and space transportation modes to enable shippers to obtain mode-neutral rapid delivery. Additionally, normalization of PTP space transportation provides an opportunity to enter an agreement for surge space transportation capacity similar to the CRAF. Commercial and government demand for space transportation enables higher launch rates that reduce costs. Foreign demand for launch services to include satellite launches may drive overseas infrastructure development that can cause global PTP space transportation. U.S. Transportation Command, existing transportation service models that utilize the set rates, and the Transportation Working Capital Fund provides a basis for space transportation as a new mode and method of transportation. The current set of space laws and arms control agreement were formed from the treaties and international customs devised during the Cold War in order to define the legal boundaries of general space activities, attempts to prohibit the weaponization of space, and regulate ballistic missile development and testing. The current set of space laws and arms control agreements are applicable to commercial PTP space transportation and may require revision to address commercial PTP space transportation. Aviation experts have said this is one of the ways that the U.S. Transportation Command, which is part of the Pentagon, will gain the upper hand in regards to space technology and also international relations. It's important to note that as of right now, no actual warfare is known to have taken place in space. But researchers have noted that throughout the years countries have carried out tests in space. As mentioned in the document, international treaties do exist that are placed there in order to regulate and stop conflicts in space and that are designed to limit the installation of space weaponry systems. The document highlights that space launches would primarily focus on transporting military cargo, but the Pentagon has also said that it would look into sending military personnel into the stratosphere. The document reveals 3 potential uses of space transportation for the U.S. military, including the following: an alternative method for logistics delivery in the event of a conflict with China and the Pacific, deployable airbase shelters that could be dropped anywhere on the globe for the U.S. Air Force, embassy support scenarios in which SpaceX rockets could be used for a quick reaction force. This is if an embassy is ever attacked. The United States government has acknowledged the existence of unidentified objects, but their stance and level of knowledge about them is not entirely clear. In June 2021, the United States government released a report on unidentified aerial phenomena, which is the new term used to describe these aircrafts. The report, issued by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, stated that there were 144 reports of unidentified aerial phenomena from February 2004 to 2021, with only one of them having an identifiable explanation. However, the report also stated that there was not enough data to determine the nature or origin of the unidentified aerial phenomena. Prior to the release of the report, the United States government has been involved in a number of investigations related to mysterious aircrafts. One of the most well-known was the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, which was a secret Pentagon program that investigated unidentified sightings. The existence of this program was revealed in 2017, and it was reportedly shut down in 2012. Overall, the level of knowledge and involvement of the United States government in this type of research and investigation is not entirely clear, and there is ongoing debate and speculation about the extent to which they may know about or be involved with unidentified aircrafts. The United States Navy accidentally released unredacted files that went on to detail mysterious aircrafts around their warships. The files were immediately deleted, which led online users to say that they didn't mean to release them, which then caused the Navy to frantically delete them. Over 60 pages were uploaded online by the military, and they were under the file name Proposed Redaction. Many suggested that the unaltered documents were not meant to be released online, with some users saying that a military official accidentally uploaded the wrong documents. Usually, when these types of documents are released, the names of places and people are redacted, which hides their identity along with the location of the sightings. However, these documents clearly outline the details of those involved, even going as far as listing names. One of the documents went into detail about how a Navy ship encountered unknown drones. Those who have been looking into this topic have said the Navy doesn't know what these objects are, with naval officials coming forward in recent years and saying that this isn't an odd occurrence, and that while they were in the Navy, they too encountered mysterious crafts above Navy ships. One user said the following: "The Navy's counter-narrative on this has been, it's just some random drones from a random cargo ship in the area. So they are telling us that 100 random drones from an unknown source that we didn't follow up on or punish for impinging on our airspace are just able to swarm our ships, and we didn't pursue them because we didn't think it was necessary. Even if the drones were a civilian prank and not Chinese or Russian, this would still be a huge deal." The frantic attempts to divert attention from the Navy leakers involved show how desperate the Department of Defense is to keep public eyes off this issue. It's starting to get comical just how many straws they'll grasp at to keep these incidents, especially nautical aircraft incidents, under wraps. Just imagine hundreds of sailors have a full-on encounter. Their lives are forever changed. They know something is out there, and it's not any technology humans are capable of. And the Navy really actually thinks they can swear every one of these people to secrecy and keep doing so indefinitely every time such an incident happens. It's wild. The Navy has struggled for years to explain away these events." End quote. Another user said the following: "Do people really think that the Navy accidentally released these documents? Don't people think it's a bit of a coincidence that the Navy has been talking about these objects, and then they just happen to dump a load of documents going into detail about them? I don't believe it. You don't just accidentally release this type of information." End quote. One document goes into detail about how these drones would come into close contact with the ships, outlining that the mysterious crafts would come within 500 feet. Those on the ship would attempt to communicate with the drones, but they said that no communication was made, and some of them would swoop over the ships and buzz them. As of right now, there's no mention of the warship firing back or trying to engage with them. Another user said this: "One thing that many people aren't talking about is that if these are advanced drones, they would raise just as many questions as it would answer. Who owns these things? How are they so advanced? And how are they able to travel at the speeds they do? This doesn't answer anything and just adds to the mystery." End quote. One of the documents reads as follows: "Hazard pilot entered 72 to perform a currency flight. Upon check-in, Hazard pilot was told by the controlling agency that there was no traffic in the area. Shortly after check-in, Hazard pilot detected a radar track off his nose at 12,000 traveling at Mach 0.1. Shortly after detecting the radar track, Hazard pilot was able to visually acquire a small aircraft. The aircraft had an approximately 5-foot wingspan and was colored white with no other distinguishable features. Due to the small size, the aircraft was determined to be an unmanned aircraft system. The Hazard pilot tracked the Hazard unmanned aircraft system for approximately 1 hour and relayed position data to the controlling agency. Surface traffic was light, with only a single stationary commercial fishing trawler and a single unidentified United States naval vessel traveling south in the vicinity of their location. At no point in the flight did the controlling facility see a radar return or a squawk that correlated with the HUAS post-flight. The controlling agency contacted numerous local unmanned aerial surveillance operators, but none claimed knowledge of the unmanned aerial surveillance. Additionally, the identity of the naval vessel in the vicinity was undetermined. With the increased prevalence of unmanned aerial craft, the mid-air potential between manned and unmanned aircraft is a growing concern. In many ways, unidentified aircrafts pose a greater mid-air risk than manned aircraft. They are often less visually significant and less radar apparent than manned aircraft. Additionally, they may not be squawking and typically have less SA to the aircraft in their vicinity than manned aircraft. The unmanned aircraft community, manned aircraft community, and ATC need to proactively manage this hazard before we are faced with a mishap.